heading to Portugal on a package holiday. We'll be exploring a small area of the huge Rio Formosa Natural Park, hoping to see some interesting wildlife. As we awaited the transfer from the airport, a hoopoe was probing the mown grass. It's a common bird in the Algarve, but after this promising start, we only had a couple more fleeting glimpses during the remainder of the holiday. The base for our stay was the Hotel Villa Gale Albacora. It's built on the site of an old tuna fishing factory and located in the heart of the Rio Formosa, a couple of kilometres from the town of Tavira. House sparrows were present in abundance, feeding on crumbs discarded by the guests. The hotel sits alongside a big river, the Rio Gilao, close to its confluence with the sea. Just across the water is the rusting hulk of an abandoned ship, while on the boulder-reinforced banks, crabs sometimes emerge to browse on algae. A ruined fort is located on sandy heathland, just a few hundred metres from the hotel. It isn't necessary to wander far to find interesting wildlife. Sardinian warblers deliver a fast chattering call from the tops of shrubs and bushes. Sirens were also seen and heard frequently. An array of wildflowers add a splash of colour to the scene, and there are some substantial cacti dotted around. The salt pans, for which the Rio Formosa is famous, attract huge numbers of wading birds. Dunlins and redshank are common. Likewise, black-winged stilts. And it was nice to see a couple of red-rumped swallows perched on the wires, a species which doesn't make it as far north as the UK. Just look at those eyebrows. It's a little owl, and the background noise comes from one of the diesel pumps which transfer water between the salt pans. These wires were a favourite perch of bee-eaters, but they're nervous birds, so I had to sit on a pile of wooden pellets and wait patiently for 20 minutes until they gained confidence and began to move closer. As the name suggests, they feed by catching flying insects, including bees and wasps. Their soft calls carry a surprising distance and are frequently heard while walking around the Rio Formosa. Here a courting pair display their affection. Tavira is an old town, built around the Rio Galileo, and it's widely considered to be the most attractive town in the Algarve. The cobbled market square is bordered by a range of shops, cafes and restaurants. Spanish terrapins are common and widespread in the rivers and streams of the Algarve, but the only place we found them was at this ornamental fountain in the centre of Tavira. A ruined castle sits in an elevated position and offers panoramic views across the town towards the salt pans and the distant Albacora Hotel. There's a large indoor market, and as a keen angler, I'm interested to see what's on the fish counters. A range of small bream species and mackerel is on offer, and in this clip, a couple of nice triggerfish can be seen alongside a turbot. This is a deep water species, ironically known as the bluefish. Live fish can often be observed in the murky waters of the river. These are grey mullet feeding on a discarded slice of bread. White storks select elevated positions within the town to build their outsized nests. We located 3 such nests in Tavira, but there may have been others. Their courtship display involves loud bill clapping and throwing back of the head. This one is overlooking the nest from a nearby vantage point. In close proximity to the nesting stalks, a female stonechat perched on barbed wire. A dirt track runs between Tavira and the nearby village of Santa Lucia. There's a diversity of habitat alongside it. This brackish ditch was seething with shrimps. Small wonder the wading birds do so well. And an overgrown freshwater ditch reverberated to the call of Iberian water frogs. They were easier to spot on the opposite side of the track, where the vegetation had been cut. But when I was in close proximity, they tended to fall silent, presumably a mechanism to avoid predation. A migratory locust was also enjoying the thick vegetation, a huge insect of around 4 inches long. In Portugal, they're solitary creatures which don't pose a threat to crops. The range of butterfly species observed was rather limited, but we did manage to track down an Iberian speciality, the Spanish festoon. We also spotted a solitary geranium bronze, a tiny butterfly which is believed to have arrived in southern Europe among flowers imported from South Africa, and has subsequently spread far and wide. The commonest lizard in Portugal is the large Samodromus. 3 of them scuttled across the track in the space of a few seconds, before disappearing into the vegetation. The bird performing this elaborate dance flew away before I could get close. I believe it was a crested lark. And this one, observed at distance in low scrub, looks like a woodchat shrike. I decided to follow the river north of Tavira, heading into the hills where there was some different habitat and perhaps some different wildlife. This wildflower-rich meadow on the edge of town looked promising, but apart from small whites and an odd clouded yellow, I saw little else. It was the same story when I climbed a track into the hills, where there were some attractive flowers, but not much in the way of bird and butterfly life. So the following day, it was back to the salt pans, and this time I decided to explore the opposite side of the river to the hotel. The salt is stored in large heaps, ready to be transported away for refining. Much of the work on the pans is still carried out manually. A couple of avocets were probing the shallow water. And a black-winged stilt was at rest. Then, in the distance, I caught sight of a party of greater flamingos. They're nervous birds which won't tolerate a close approach, so it was a case of stalking stealthily across the pans to get as near as possible. That building in the background is the Albacora Hotel. Not far away as the flamingo flies, but of course it's separated by the river. In the spring months, the number of flamingos is much depleted, because the breeding birds migrate to Mediterranean countries. So this group, which totalled 16 birds, consists of juveniles and non-breeding adults. The adults are easily distinguished by the pink legs. I managed to reach a position about 100 metres away, but any closer and the flamingos would have been on high alert. Just watch the heads lift as I deliberately stand up and show myself. A pair of little terns were also present in the area. I've been unable to put a name to this bird, probably a warbler of some description. And of course the bee-eaters were never far away. Everywhere you look in Portugal there seems to be graffiti, and the derelict buildings scattered around the salt pans haven't escaped the attention of the street artists. Behind this crumbling factory there's a tidal lagoon, where fiddler crabs feed in the mud as the water recedes. They never stray far from their burrows, and disappear in the blink of an eye if danger threatens. There are many colonies of black ants, which come and go from their nests along distinct narrow tracks from which they rarely stray. On our penultimate morning we followed a path to the east of Tavira, heading towards the village of Cabanas. It took us close to the Algarve Railway, where we discovered that even the local trains are not immune from graffiti. A little egret was stalking the banks of a tidal river. Another lizard was sitting on top of a dry stone wall. It was probably another large Samodromus. The markings can vary between different individuals. Despite the blustery conditions, we found several Spanish marbled whites active in woodland clearings alongside the path. Although similar in appearance, it's a different species to the UK butterfly. The final morning has arrived, but there's time to potter around outside the hotel before heading back to the airport. Single beetles occupied many of these large and attractive daisy-like flowers. If a second beetle appeared on the scene, a tussle usually ensued before the imposter was evicted. And another butterfly was added to the telly, this one the green striped white. It's on the wing right through the winter in Portugal, from November until July. A solitary grey plover was feeding in one of the salt pans. The holiday's drawn to a close, and it's time to head to Faroe Airport for an evening flight back to Leeds Bradford.